Hi, folks. Welcome to our webinar today. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm really looking forward to speaking with my guest, Rochelle Dene-Poth, about teaching about AI in elementary education. I'm Jason Innes. I'm the Director of Curriculum and Training at KIBO Robots. We're sponsoring the webinar today. And I'm looking forward to exploring some of these topics with you, with Rochelle. I'll just give a little bit of orientation, then I'll introduce Rochelle, my guest. So at the top of the webinar, I'll just let you know that we have the chat and your microphones and video are sort of disabled. This is sort of a listen-only webinar, but we do have the questions and answer feature in GoToWebinar turned on. So if you have a question throughout the whole presentation today, you can send that question in, and then we have a Q&A period at the end when we'll address audience questions. So please do use that feature, send in your questions. If you have questions about sort of how the webinar works, you're having trouble with audio, you can also send questions, and my colleague Christina, our marketing director, is available and she can help answer those questions. But if you have questions for me or Rochelle that you'd like us to address in the Q&A, just send them along. As I mentioned, we're going to be speaking about artificial intelligence and how we can engage with that topic in early childhood STEM education. So there's a lot of talk about AI and how it's affecting our teaching and sort of the work that we do as teachers. There's a lot of talk about what AI is going to do to the future of jobs and work, to students' homework, all of those questions. Those are very important questions. But this webinar is really going to focus on how we can teach young children about AI, what AI is, how it works, and importantly, how that kind of relates to teaching STEM and computer science in K-5. So that's our sort of overview of what we're going to be doing. I'll spend a couple of minutes introducing the KIBO robot. That's KinderLab's educational platform for teaching coding and engineering in early childhood. It's also the robot that we use to help introduce AI concepts to children, and you'll learn a little bit about that. But I'm also excited that I'm joined by my guest today, Rochelle Dene-Poth. Rochelle is an ed tech consultant. She's she's a presenter. She's also an attorney. She writes about using technology in education. She teaches STEM and STEAM, as well as Spanish language in middle school and high school. She has a lot of diverse perspectives. I'm really excited to be joined by Rochelle. She'll also be sharing her sort of thoughts about teaching AI to young children. So welcome, Rochelle. Do you want to give a little bit more background?
Yeah, well, thank you for the opportunity to be here, and so exciting to see people joining in. And this is a topic, I mean, anything education, you could tell by my experience, like I just love learning and I love sharing ideas. And the AI component of it is something that I've really enjoyed in all of my classes and outside of my classroom, helping educators get started for, hard to believe, almost 6 years now. So I'm just looking forward to our conversation today, questions that people have. And, you know, if anybody has questions, wants some ideas, I may not be the expert, but I would be happy to share some more ideas with you. And yeah, just anxious to dive in. So thank you for the opportunity to be here today.
Absolutely. Yeah, and you're, I think we're all exploring this topic sort of anew together. So I'm not sure there's anyone who could claim to be a total expert out there in this topic, but something that I've really appreciated about your writing and your presentations is the sense of discovery and exploration you bring to the way you teach these advanced topics. I think for young children, with that sort of constructivist learning that we bring to early childhood, the idea that we're in there kind of exploring and learning about these tools alongside our students is a great attitude to bring. And I see that in the work that you do. So looking forward to the talk also. Great. So just a couple of other housekeeping items then for the webinar today. I wanted to start with this opportunity to kind of learn a little bit more about you all, the folks who have joined us for the webinar today. So we have a quick poll that you can use to just choose the answer that you feel best fits your role sort of in early childhood education. So I'm going to use the polls feature to launch this as a little window on your display. You can just choose the role. Are you a classroom teacher? Are you a specialist? Are you in administration? Maybe you're in out of school time or informal ed, maybe museums, libraries, or if you're in sort of research or a university context. Looking like we have a lot of technology and literacy and library media specialists with us today. That's great. This is definitely an area at the intersection of kind of new technology, computer science, that really benefits from having an interested tech specialist or library media specialist leading the charge. So that's wonderful. All right, I'm just going to give you a couple more minutes or a couple more seconds to answer that poll, and then we will close it and I'll share those results. Okay, so let me just put that up on the screen. So you can see we have a nice sort of plurality there of library media and technology specialists, a good share of classroom teachers, a lot of folks coming from a research perspective as well. That makes sense. This is a really interesting new field, challenging for teaching, challenging for PD, for curriculum. So we appreciate folks coming from that perspective too. So thanks a lot for sharing that about your own interests. The last little bit of housekeeping that I'll do is a little bit of surprise news. There's an opportunity to win one or both, I suppose, of these books that we're offering today. So for folks who stick around until the end of the webinar today, we really appreciate your sustained interest. We're going to run till around 4:45 Eastern, so 45 minutes. And if for those who stay, we'll enter you into a drawing to win one of these two books. Rochelle, do you want to talk a little bit about your book, Unconventional?
Yeah, thanks. So it is, it's mixing things up in your classroom, because for years I was doing things the same way and I was afraid to take any risks or anything. And so it for me was just like a growth process I went through. So I shared ideas of unconventional, what might be different for you that you think, oh, well, I'm just because I used to always say I'm just a Spanish teacher. I can't do these types of things, pushing the boundaries a little bit. And so shared some ideas related to some stories and things in my classroom and what I learned from students, and just threw it all together into a book and had a student help me to design the cover. So thank you for giving away one of the books today.
Awesome, that's great. Yeah, and Coding as a Playground, for those who know a little bit about KinderLab's history, KinderLab was founded by Professor Marina Bears. She's a researcher in early childhood education and exploring how young children engage with technology. She and her research group invented Scratch Junior, the iPad coding app, and of course, she invented KIBO as well. So this book, Coding as a Playground, provides a lot of hands-on tips for teachers looking to integrate technology into their teaching. It's written with kind of working teachers in mind, and it's very actionable. So it's a great book, and we'd love to give a copy away. So stick around till the end of the webinar and you'll be entered into a drawing to win. Okay, so I'm just gonna take like 2 minutes to give a brief overview of KinderLab and the KIBO robot. I know a lot of folks who are here today already are familiar with KIBO, which we really appreciate. For those who aren't, I just want to orient, mostly because it's through engagement with KIBO that you can use the AI introductory curriculum that KinderLab Robotics has released, and which you can download for free as part of this webinar. So I'll just give you a quick overview. So KIBO is a robot platform designed to allow young children to engage with coding, computer science, and engineering in a totally screen-free way. So although kids are learning coding and computer science, they aren't doing it with any app or computers or iPads or anything. They're using physical manipulatives to build and program their robot. They can also decorate the robot with arts and crafts materials to engage the imagination play, the storytelling, the role play. It's designed for younger children, so as young as pre-K up through 3rd grade primarily, with some extensions into upper elementary as well. KinderLab is founded, I mentioned, by Dr. Marina Bears. She and her research group, which are now based at Boston College, She invented the KIBO, did the research behind it, demonstrated the effectiveness of using screen-free manipulatives to introduce coding for young kids. She continues to research in this field, publishes books and papers, coding as a playground there. You see right in the middle, that's the one that you can win at today's webinar. Dr. Bears continues to advise our work at KinderLab Robotics as our Chief Science Officer. I mentioned that KIBO uses screen-free manipulatives, so the robot itself is entirely screen-free, of course, and moves around the classroom as a physical object that kids can engage with. And the programming of the robot uses these manipulatives, these wooden blocks. So children create programs or sequences of these blocks, where each block represents one action, just like the icons on screen in Scratch Junior. The children create a sequence, then use a scanner built into the robot to scan the barcodes to teach their program to the robot. KIBO has a variety of attachments that allow it to make light, make sound, and also sense the environment, like sensing distance, sensing sound. Those sensor parts are important for the tie-in to artificial intelligence. When children program the robot, we encourage them to put it in contexts across the curriculum, and our curriculum emphasizes this. So rather than just programming a robot to move around, maybe we're doing a community unit in kindergarten, we're decorating KIBO like a fire truck or other community helper, and then creating a program to represent the actions of that fire truck within the town, honking its horn, flashing its siren, red and white, driving forward to help the people in the town. So those ideas of programming, storytelling, and imagination play come together in a really natural way with a screen-free, developmentally appropriate tool like KIBO. So the final piece that I'll kind of mention before we get into our discussion is that we have released a free curriculum unit introducing artificial intelligence to young kids through engagement with the KIBO robot. This curriculum is available for free right now. If you're live with us in the webinar, there's a handouts tab within your GoToWebinar environment. You can download the PDF right now. At the end of the webinar, also, we'll provide a link to folks who would like to download it from our website. If you're joining us later watching the recording. This book is 5 lessons. It's designed for kids who have a little bit of experience with KIBO, so we've aimed it at that grade range of 1 to 3. KIBO itself starts as young as pre-K, but these concepts require a little bit more advanced engagement with KIBO's programming. And throughout this set of lessons, we're engaging in some of the core concepts of artificial intelligence. We're allowing children to engage with the idea of automation or robots that can operate independently. We're allowing children to engage with the idea of sensors and robots sensing the environment to make decisions about what to do next. And then we're also engaging with ideas of social responsibility, making sure that we create AI and robotic systems that are designed to serve people in a positive way. So if you're interested in kind of a really hands-on way to think about how you can introduce some basic concepts of artificial intelligence, this free booklet allows you to do that through engagement with the KIBO robot for young kids. Okay, so that's a little bit of overview of kind of what KIBO is all about and where we're coming from as we think about AI. But I'd like to really open it up now to Rochelle to get your thoughts on these ideas of teaching sort of STEM and computer science and how AI fits in. How do you see the importance of those either in early childhood or feeding into the older kids that you've worked with in the STEAM class?
Yeah, so it always amazes me how quickly students learn. You think that, I mean, in my class, in my experience with my 8th graders, there are so many times when I'm prepared to explain to them how to do something, and before I can say the first 5 words, they're already halfway done with what it is, and they're ready to move on to the next thing. And even like we learned, when schools were closed and students had to learn virtually, like they got used to using iPads and technology, and they learn so fast, and they're curious, and we want them to have a chance to really build those skills. And so I think that the more opportunities that we can give students, the earliest learners all the way up through the students that I work with, opportunities through STEM, and especially to learn about AI, it's so important because I mean we're surrounded by all these technologies in the world, but more than just the tools that they're learning for for coding, for example, it's all of the skills that they're developing in the process. And so we're giving them time year after year in different ways to develop those skills that like social emotional learning we hear about. Everybody's referring to it differently these days, but we know at the end of the day, whether you want to say 21st century, future ready, future focused skills, the skills that come about from these opportunities through STEM help students to really adapt to learning in different ways and then prepare them for the future. And I love, the sense of wonder and the excitement for, even my eighth graders, because, my eighth graders, I brought this into my classroom and they were super excited. They're like, oh, what is that? Can we try it? And it was great for me to see them learning about it, and then just hearing their responses saying like, oh, this, how young could kids be to start using this? And I said, well, what do you think? And then when I told them, they're like, really? So like my younger siblings could use this. And it's fun because it's something that they can do independently. Like you don't need to be there all around them all the time, even though as teachers, we feel like we have to be the expert and the only facilitator teacher in the room, but we're facilitating it, but we can also co-learn with them. And it gives us so many opportunities to kind of, connect STEM with our content, let the students really engage in learning and see the relevance of it, because there's such a huge demand for it, not just now, but there will continue to be. So that
Mhm.
was, when I start talking about these topics, I get excited because I see, as a Spanish teacher, I used to think, what else can I have them do besides Spanish? I want them to learn the language. And of course, we want them to learn the content we're teaching. That's essential. But we also need to help them develop skills that will transfer to whatever it is they do whenever they enter the workforce or whenever they leave our classrooms. And those types of skill sets can be developed by these types of opportunities. So why not start them young?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great point. And that's, I think, where we can start to think about AI specifically in that context. Where I think school districts are starting to see the importance of starting STEM education young, and artificial intelligence, although it's a topic that I know seems really advanced, and later on, I think we'll talk a little bit about how teachers from kind of a PD perspective can get more comfortable with sort of what AI is and how to talk about it. But I think the most important thing is that artificial intelligence is a application of these STEM and computer science concepts that we're introducing to young kids. So as we allow young children to explore things like coding and sensors and robots, we can use AI as an example of something that the children may encounter in their lives that makes these tools sort of relevant. And that's kind of where I think we can start to say, I think some teachers may feel like, okay, AI, I sort of get how that's something that like maybe has some big impact on like future knowledge work, or maybe there's going to be important things about like our political discourse where like AI bots might pose a hazard. But what does this really have to do with kind of young children's lives? And I know that you've talked about getting children to think about all of the sort of technology that they encounter in their day, and helping children see, in a developmentally appropriate way, how those work and how some of those tools use AI. So do you mind sharing a little bit about that, like how we can help children understand what this concept even means and where they might encounter it?
Yeah, I think it's, I even had a conversation in my STEAM class today with some students about, do you think you're using AI, relying on AI every day? And I named a couple of them. They're like, no, no. And it's important for students to understand because it is increasingly appearing in all aspects of our lives and in some of the things that they're already using or that their families are using. And I think, for students to understand, a lot of things about it, what it is, how does it work, what are the benefits, what are the things that we should be concerned about, and to be involved in conversations about all of that. But I have no doubt that on a daily basis that somewhere, even the youngest kids are surrounded by, maybe a family member who's using a voice assistant, for example. We have chatbots and all of these things, or even just the apps that they're using have AI built into them. And so they are learning in that process how AI can, adapt to maybe their learning progress or their learning style, or give them different activities to do. But I think beyond that, giving kids a chance where they're learning about these technologies that they're hearing about, so they can, it is complex. And we, again, don't know 5 years, 10 years from now, what the jobs are going to look like, how much we're going to rely on this technology, or how much is going to change the work that we do as educators, or potentially the future careers that the youngest kids want to have. And so getting them involved in that conversation early, I think, because they are so curious when they're learning, they come up with, for some reason, I can't recall where I read this, but it was about the number of questions that an average child asks per day, and how the older they get, that number really significantly decreases. And so it's like the sense of wonder, and giving them a chance to wonder about, like, well, how does this work, or why does this matter, and see if they're interested in it and curious about it. So who knows, they might become, not just consumers, but then the creators and the innovators as they get older. And so giving them, some structured steps or some support and guiding them, but then giving them some opportunities to create on their own. I think it's fun to do when they're young, and it's engaging, but it's also very important to do as well, just to prepare them for the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And that one of the things that we can think about as we engage with teaching what AI is at all different grade levels is kind of the learning objectives at different levels. So some of the things that you just mentioned about keeping the discussion focused on their curiosity and focused on sort of portions of the answers that are kind of relevant to what we're trying to teach them about STEM and computer science. I mean, we're in talking with teachers who have, I sort of thought, oh, kids, especially in like grades 1, 2, 3, they may not even have ideas about like what AI even is, but they do hear these terms like from their parents, from the community, and there's even some like apprehension, there's some fear. Young children may think like AI is some, a threat that's coming for them in some way. And these simple learning objectives, like helping children understand that AI is just a tool, invented by human engineers, that AI, just like robots, they work based on sort of rules that we can understand, and that as programmers, like our little first, second, and third graders, they can create programs that are just like the ones that control AI systems. And then this idea that AI isn't like alive, that's something I see children sort of thinking hard about, even when it comes to robots. And I think AI, as it advances more, is going to pose that question in children's minds too. So helping them understand that AI isn't alive, but that it can be used to help solve difficult problems. So, a simple set of learning objectives like that, that's really what we're talking about when we talk about teaching AI for the younger kids. I think the older kids, they can start to engage in more complex ways. But so I guess from kind of a PD and teacher's point of view, I know you've given a lot of thought to that as well, Rochelle. Like, what are some ways that a teacher who maybe doesn't see themselves as an expert in AI, or maybe feels they're just a, whatever classroom teacher or a Spanish teacher, like you said earlier, how can a teacher sort of begin to get comfortable with teaching AI?
You want the honest answer? Yeah, I honestly, you just dive in, and that's what I did. Goodness, it was like March of 2018, because I had learned a little bit about it. I was surprised of how much we were surrounded by it then, compared to now, how things have changed. But I knew that there was a need to start teaching about it, and so I started with the basics. What is AI? Where do we see it? What are some examples? And really, a lot of what we do and have done in my class, and even when I've done webinars and trainings with teachers, is I take them through the phases. Okay, what do you think of first when you think about AI? Okay, where do we see it? I give them some examples, have some discussion, what are the benefits? What are some concerns that we should have? And then you find some tools or some resources to get started with. And, there's so many of them out there. But you, again, like we said earlier, like you don't have to be the expert because we are learning with our students and get them started and then let them have some ideas and come back and share with you. And then the next time you do it, like you become, trust me, you become way more comfortable with it over time. And you'll never be able to keep up because it's changing so fast now. Maybe a couple of years ago, I felt like I was keeping up pretty well, but now, it's happening, things are happening so fast, but you just have to start. And it's little bits here and there. And there's so many great resources, like you mentioned, with KIBO that you can use that really do make it easy for teachers to just open it up and start in their classrooms with not much knowledge at all, trust me. But once you get started, you will enjoy it, the kids will enjoy it, and you just keep going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really helpful. That sense of exploration and discovery. And I think one of the things that that we can think about, especially for like folks in our audience who are coming at this from like a instructional technology and tech specialist point of view, is we know that there are most states now have computer science standards that go down to kindergarten. Now, most states also don't have sort of AI instructional standards necessarily yet, but there are organizations working on content guidelines development. This image that you see here is from an organization called AI for K-12. They're working on a set of content guidelines to help curriculum developers who are interested in teaching about AI. They break down some of the concepts into really simple language for the kids. And we'll have a link to this in the resources section at the end of the webinar. But I think the most important sort of thing to think about when we're thinking about teaching about AI is that when we teach about AI, we really are also teaching about computer science. So to the degree that we're looking at ways to engage with computer science in K-2 and 3 to 5 grade bands, so many of the concepts that we want to teach about, like algorithms and sequencing and sensors and how computers and robots sort of sense the environment, and then also how we can use technology responsibly or focus on sort of social good, all of those can be sort of explored through the specific example of artificial intelligence. So that's where that that idea that you mentioned earlier, Rochelle, that like these AI tools are examples of things that people create using the techniques of, once they get into sort of the working world in STEM, these are the kinds of things that engineers are creating. So letting children see AI as an example of computer science application is a good way to help frame it for K-2. So I imagine you think about sort of computer science standards as you're teaching in your STEAM class and kind of weaving those in for the older kids as well.
Yeah, I do, especially like in the ISTE standards as well, and the language standards, of course. But I'm always, again, thinking about I want them to learn the content, but looking beyond that, what are the skills that they need? And so I do refer to all of those, especially in the STEAM course. But the thing, about these, the resources that you mentioned, they have things that are available for teachers. So if educators are worried about, are these safe for my students? Or, can I find, how much time is it going to take to find a resource? You know that you can go to any of those sites that you've listed and you can find something that's relevant to the grade that you're working with. If you're an administrator, because I know we have some administrators in here, and if you're looking for something that provides for K through 12, know that those are resources that have been vetted. They have years of experience. They continue to keep things updated. And, the AI 4K12, I'm based in Pittsburgh. And so, I've been to, a lot of researches done at Carnegie Mellon with Dave Turetsky, and I had a chance to go there and learn from him a couple of years ago. So it's exciting to see all of these websites with tons of resources that make it easier for educators to get started and know that what you're using is relevant and it's up to date and it's safe for your students and for all your educators and the families that are supporting them at home as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great point, and that's a good segue into sort of overview of some resources that we can offer to teachers who are interested in kind of learning more, either about the standards development work the policy work, or most importantly, some hands-on, lesson plans that they can just take and run. So I'll just, we don't need to go through sort of every one of these, although I do want to call out a few, but I'd like to sort of point out again the Thinking with KIBO, which is the free set of 5 concrete lesson plans that you could just take and run with children who have a little bit of background knowledge with KIBO. So if you are a KIBO user and you've used KIBO to teach your younger children about coding and computer science, Thinking with KIBO is something kind of a next step that you can take to introduce these AI concepts in a really hands-on way. We engage again with sensors, with the sense, think, act cycle, which is a concept that both AI and robotics use to sort of express how robots and computers sort of perceive the world and then make decisions. We engage with the idea of interacting with a robot in sort of naturalistic ways. So through facial expressions or voice. We can't do those with KIBO's technology, but the children sort of role play it in interesting ways. And we engage with social impact. So the children think about an AI system that they could design using technology like KIBO's to help solve a problem that's in their community. I know that, Rochelle, you have a number of resources that you make available through a sort of shared master Google Doc. That's a wonderful repository. So I wonder if you wanted to talk about some of your kind of favorite resources in addition to the ones that are listed here.
Yeah, so you have some great ones that I think there's 1 or 2 of them there I'm going to have to add into mine, but you have my bit.ly at the bottom, and any session that I've ever done, I have so many slides in my presentation, and I save people the space in their Google Drive and just put it all into a document. So if anybody goes to that document, you'll find a lot of information about AI, also some things related to STEM and AR, VR, but a lot of the ones that you've mentioned in my class, we do a lot of different things, not just in my STEAM class, but also in my Spanish class as well. And for anybody who's joining in, wondering about, just AI, for example, ISTE has, I think, 5 now curriculum guides that are elementary, high school, electives, computer science. They also have an ethics guide. And those are lessons with your standards, ISTE standards, Common Core, any kind of thing that you need to get started with. And I like those ones as well, because for somebody who's thinking, okay, I'm going to do this tomorrow, I don't have that much time to prepare, what can I do? These resources really do make it easy for you to just, even like you said with what you offer too, I mean, open it up and you follow it. And the first time, is it going to go perfect? Probably not. My third time is probably not going to go perfect. We always make mistakes, but we learn and we improve over time, and that's a good model to set for students. So yeah, if anybody wants to check out my Google document, there's a lot of pages in it, but if you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out. I'd be happy to help.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for sharing that. It is a great resource. I'll point out a couple of the ones that are on here that I wanted to draw folks' attention to in particular, aside from, of course, Thinking with KIBO. The folks at RAISE, which is an initiative out of MIT. It's responsible artificial intelligence for social empowerment, I think. But it's a effort to kind of collect a lot of different kinds of resources for both understanding like the role of AI in society, but also in a really practical way, teaching about AI. And they've started a really great initiative called Day of AI, which is kind of like modeled on the hour of code concept, of like, let's choose a time throughout the year, even if you're not sort of teaching about AI or how it works as a regular part of your curriculum, we'll pick a day where we can focus on introducing this concept in whatever depth makes sense for your work, like in the library, or if you're an instructional technologist. They organize a lot of resources to support schools doing Day of AI initiatives. They just had the first year of it, I believe, this year. So they'll be going on the second Day of AI this school year. So keep an eye out for that. Like you mentioned, Rochelle, ISTE there at iste.org/AI, they have a number of really great curriculum guides that they've created. So those are also a good resource if you're looking for just runnable lesson plans, and they do have elementary age lessons available there. So that's, ISTE's always a great organization. The AI Club picture books I mentioned there, that was actually a resource suggested by Professor Turetsky, who you mentioned, Rochelle. Dave Turetsky at Carnegie Mellon is the lead investigator for the AI for K-12 project. So he's organized an effort to develop these content guidelines, that blue sort of wheel that you see that breaks AI down into these ideas of perception, representation, learning, interaction, and societal impact. That effort has developed K-12 content guidelines covering what children should know and providing all kinds of helpful language that teachers can use. And then the last resource that I'll just mention is a really cute sort of side thing. There's this project called Tweenbots by a sort of product designer and researcher and artist named Casey Kinzer, who developed this little project with these cute little cardboard robots that you see there. The robots just drive straight forward. They don't steer, they don't sense, they don't do anything, but she has little signs on them saying where they need to get. And this was in New York City that she did this experiment, and followed the robot around, sort of watching how people interacted with it, and sort of people, rather than just sort of ignoring it or smushing it, they would move it off the curb, aim it in the right direction, and help it get to where it was trying to get to. And the reason this relates to AI is it's an example of how systems that are designed to sort of engage with people in an expressive, emotive way lead us to interact with those systems differently. And that's something that we can explore even for young kids. That way that a robot or an AI system presents itself to us can really affect how we relate to it. So these are some examples of resources that for younger children we can share and engage with. So I know we're starting to run short on time, and I really want to make sure we have time for questions for folks. We have one question that has come through asking about helping understand kind of what this looks like in a, sort of very concrete sense, like what's an example of a lesson that we do. I'm actually gonna, I'm sorry for this, but zip back in the slides a little bit to a slide that we skipped over in the interest of time, which is a sample lesson from Thinking with KIBO. So I'll answer the question this way by sharing this example, and then Rochelle, maybe you have an example of like what a lesson introducing the ideas of AI might really look like. So this lesson called a KIBO Rover is one of the 5 lessons in Thinking with KIBO, our free curriculum guide. It's a 1-hour lesson. It assumes that children already know how to basically program KIBO and have had some experience with it. So in this lesson, we have a guided circle discussion where we introduce that concept of sense, think, act, which is a way of talking about how computer systems sort of take in information, process it using programs that their human programmers have given them, or in the case of AI, which they have developed through machine learning, and then take action. So that simple cycle of sensing, thinking, and acting is sort of at the heart of robotics. It's also important to AI. We then have a reading where we recommend reading a book called Goodnight Oppie, which is about the Opportunity Mars rover and the way that the Mars rover was able to operate somewhat independently, but also stay in communication with its mission team at NASA. So that idea of a sort of slightly independent but still connected computer system is a good example of how AI and robotics work. And then we engage the children to create programs for their KIBOs that use KIBO's sensors, like light sensors and distance sensors, to operate independently to explore an area of the classroom. Then we come back and we do a closing reflection on how a robot with a program explores an environment in a way that's different from how a human would. And we use that to engage in some, thinking about and talking about how human thinking is different from what robots and AI can do. So that's an example of a concrete lesson. This, again, is drawn from our curriculum book, but I wonder, Rochelle, do you have an example maybe with the slightly older kids you've worked with, or thoughts on, how the youngest kids can do it?
Yeah, that's one thing that I will say, like, even though, you might say, oh, well, this tool is for this grade level or it's for older kids. I mean, you can always adapt things. And like the one thing I love about my 8th grade course is that I bring in all the things that are even for the younger kids because I want to see what it looks like. Because when I'm working with educators, I want to know what that product, what that tool, whatever the resource is going to look like when it's in the hands of the students, or what are the questions that are going to come up. And so whenever we had our KIBO, when it came for the first time, I let them always unpack it, pull it apart, see what it is, figure it out, because a lot of times, they'll ask me and I may know, I may have an idea, or I may have a little bit of an idea. And sometimes I don't really have much of an idea at all. And so I really want them to kind of dive in. And so when the older students get involved with it, I let them kind of come up with their own ideas of like, well, what do you think you could do with this? How could you foresee that you could use this in a science class or in an English class or something? Like you have here the example of, connecting the reading, and then get students to do some like creativity or engage in creativity and problem solving. And so even though it might be for, a 2nd grader, a 3rd grader, or whatever, younger learner might be, you can level it up and just change like with a little tweak, because educators, if nothing else, we are super adaptable and flexible, and we can be creative. And so with my students, they love exploring all of the different tools that they can, especially when it comes to something where they can work with their classmates. And there's really not one right answer. They can create something in design and be creative and walk away with it. And a lot of them go into it thinking, well, I'm not going to like doing this, or why do I have to do this? And then they leave it like, wait, I want to do that some more. And so it's great to just kind of open it up to them. Even if you think that your learners are too old for something, there's still opportunities there for them to learn from it. And then that might just kind of spark an interest for them to continue down that path and learn about more things related to STEM.
Yeah, that's a great point. With the older kids, maybe if we're engaging with a pretty advanced concept like AI, it's helpful to use a simpler tool to sort of jump off from. So we only have a couple minutes left. We did have one more question, which I think you would be able to speak to really well, which is if you have any advice for teachers who are looking to bring in things like robotics or advanced teaching like AI into a school, sort of helping them make the case to administration. I mean, maybe sharing how you've sort of made the case about your STEAM class, but any advice there in just the last minute or two?
Yeah, so my STEAM class, just briefly was I was teaching 7th and 8th graders about hummingbird robots years ago, and then they moved that down to the younger grades, and so I had to come up with what I wanted to teach about. And of course, I wanted to teach about all the things. I wanted to do the coding because I was coding back in the last century whenever I was younger in 8th grade, and I just think it's exciting, and I know there's such a need for it. And so for funding, making sure you have the resources, or not knowing really where to begin, you don't want to necessarily go all in and get one thing. And so if you're limited in resources, use things like stations and have students work in small groups, and find things that you can really use across different grade levels, content areas that you can share ideas. And I think that works really well, especially with this. I know I have some teachers, some elementary teachers in my school, that they have the KIBO, and they can share the ideas and get started. But just learning with students is the best advice. But just start. Like that's probably the number one thing, is just start, have an idea. Tomorrow, make a few minutes and just have a conversation. And I'm sure you can tie AI into whatever you're teaching and STEM into it. But just start with one thing, try it out, get the feedback from the students, because I think that's really important as well, and see what questions they have, make time for yourself to reflect on it, and then you just keep going, because it's like learning never stops. You just keep on tweaking things and changing as you go.
Definitely, yeah, here. Well, thanks. That's a great note to end this on, as we've sort of explored what is a new topic for for all of us, I think. But I really appreciate everybody joining us today. And thank you so much, Rochelle, for your time and sharing your wisdom and experience.
Yeah.
I've mentioned the Thinking with KIBO free download. You can grab it right now from the handouts section if you're live with us. Otherwise, you can go to kinderlabrobotics.com/AI and you can download this lesson plan. We'd love to hear what you think of it. We'd love to get any feedback. If you try this out and use it with your kids, please let us know what you think and what your experience was like. And I'll just leave us with this this contact slide. Please, again, feel free to reach out to me with any questions, or Rochelle, I know, thank you for sharing your contact info. You're very generous with your time and thoughts. So thank you again for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. It's been great chatting, and hopefully everybody that's joining in is going to check out the resources, and most everybody stuck around till the end to, I think, win some prizes and get our contact info, and hopefully feel like motivated to get started tomorrow or soon enough.
Soon enough. That's right. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and that's right. For those who stuck around to the end, thank you very much. And we will be running a drawing to select the winners of those books, Rochelle's book and Dr. Bears's Coding as a Playground. So we will reach out to you if you're the winner. But otherwise, thank you very much for joining us, and keep an eye out for future webinars from both us and from Rochelle.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.